take a moment to acknowledge the research report being launched, Building Beyond Borders, which provides critical insights into the experiences of students and staff engaging with global citizenship and development education. The study highlights both the opportunities and the challenges of embedding GCD into university curricula and offers practical recommendations for strengthening its integration into higher education generally. I'll read the report with great interest and see it as a really important contribution to both the work of the university and indeed the wider discourse on these issues, both nationally and internationally. We certainly hope, as we implement the Global Engagement Plan, which will be launched in April, that it will be through initiatives like Praxis that will serve as a model, as an exemplar for impactful global education, demonstrating how universities can champion this important work, embedding it in all that we do, aligning with the SDGs, of course, and fostering meaningful and mutually beneficial and respectful collaborations. So I really want to extend sincere thanks and congratulations to you, Gertrude, for your continued leadership in this area, all of the exceptional hard work that you do, your resilience also in pursuing these issues as a priority continuously, to the great benefit of the university. So thank you for all of that you do, and we want to celebrate that today as well. Also thanking all the authors of all the resources, the research team, everyone who's contributed to this very impressive body of work. You really all continue to inspire and lead the commitment of others, and I've no doubt that the impact of that will be felt by the university, both through the implementation of our Global Engagement Plan, but also much more generally across the higher education landscape. So I'll conclude really by encouraging everyone to engage with the resources, and we look to disseminate them as widely as we can, to engage with them in our work, explore the findings of the research, and to take part in the ongoing conversation about the role of education in creating a more just and sustainable world. And I'll just finish by saying we have next week an opportunity in a range of different contexts through Refugee Week, a really, really nice set of diverse opportunities to engage and reflect and have conversation in social, academic, and different contexts. So some really live examples of bringing this to bear in Refugee Week next week. But of course it resonates more broadly than that. And again, I want to congratulate you and thank you for inviting me to speak and be part of this really important event. Thanks, Gertrude.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Ursula, for those lovely, kind comments. Resilience is a good word there, all right. I think, I suppose UCC is lucky now to have a Vice President for Global Engagement. When the Praxis project started, I don't think you were there, or even the office wasn't there. And it's been a mammoth task yourself, and I know that there's been a lot of listening and a lot of consultation in terms of global engagement for the university as a whole. And it was lovely to see, after all that listening and consultation, that global citizenship education is in there and is recognised and stuff. And so, I can just imagine how hard it was to start and try and do all that work and get it together as well. So, I look forward to working with you further, as do many people I know who are here today. So thank you very much. Can I just
say, Gertrude, I do all that genuinely standing on the shoulders of everyone who's gone before. This is an easy job when you've such a rich tapestry to draw on. So really it's a hugely important part of what we do to build and enrich all the other work that's ongoing. That really is the easy, my job is the easy part. So thank you for that vote of confidence and support.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, it's great that we're at this stage now. I think it makes a big difference to our work here going forward. And as you say, the work is not about one or two people. I mean, honestly, I can't tell you how grateful I am to the people who are here today, who have worked for a very long time and being very resilient. So we'll recognise them all as we're going along. So I'm going to move forward now. Renee, would you mind going to the next slide? And then the next, yeah, we did that. The next one, that was Ursula. And the next one. So I would like to now hand over to the head of the School of Education in UCC, Professor Nicola Ingram. The Praxis project was originally under the Centre for Global Development, and my thanks to all of those who were involved there in initiating the project with me. However, it has moved into an academic department, into the School of Education. I've been there now for about year and a half, 2 years. So my current head of school is Professor Ingram, and here she is in all her glory. She can explain the sweatshirt to you herself. And she has given me permission to use this, but you can explain the pictures on the wall there, Nicola. I'll hand over to you.
Okay, thank you, Gertrude. Okay, yeah, that's my Slay the Patriarchy Christmas jumper when I was giving a talk at a launch of a book of teaching resources and global citizenship education in the Arla with the Wall of Men. Say no more. Okay, so I am first of all going to say thank you to Ursula. It's really great to have you here, and just to recognize the great work that Gertrude has been doing. I think it's really important that we take this opportunity to thank you, Gertrude. It's absolutely vital work for the university, and it's the sort of work that isn't always visible, and I think it's really nice to have the opportunity here today to come together just to kind of celebrate as well as anything else. And I just want to thank you for your ongoing commitment to this, Gertrude, and also to say it's an absolute pleasure to have you in the School of Education. I hope you have finally found a home at the university within the school. And even though a lot of our business is initial teacher education, I think there's a vital role for this work on social justice in the education school, and actually it fits very nicely with quite a lot of the orientation of our research in the School of Education towards social justice issues. It's an absolute pleasure, as I said, to be here today to celebrate the launch of these 8 educational resources and the research report Building Beyond Borders. And this is an important milestone, and not only for the Praxis project, but for the wider community that is committed to education for social justice and global responsibility. And that threads through all of the work that we do at the university across all of our disciplines. So I can't stress how important I find this work and how proud I am of you, Gertrude, for everything that you've done here. At the School of Education, we recognise that education is not just about delivery of content. It's about transformation. And I would also say it's about transgression. I very much follow Bell Hooks in her thinking around teaching to transgress and thinking about education as the practice of freedom. And that's very important within the space of social justice and global citizenship and global justice education. So I think it's very important for us to recognise the role of social justice within education to transform people and to transform the way that they think in order for them to go out into society and shape society and to change society. I think education for me it's always been a space where people challenge ideas. It can be a space of reproduction, and that is problematic, but it is also a space to contest dominant narratives, to imagine new possibilities. And I think more than ever, it's essential that we recognise our responsibility as educators to foster critical thinking, ethical responsibility, and active engagement with global issues. In terms of global citizenship and development education as transformative, I think that the work of the Praxis project is vital in playing a role in challenging and pushing forward a new agenda around global justice. It asks us to go beyond the surface level of global issues and think deeply about power, about privilege, about inequality and resistance. It encourages us and our students to move beyond the idea of simply understanding the world toward actively questioning it and working to change it. And that's, you cannot stress the that's so foundational to what we do as educators. It's foundational to who we are as an institution. We are at the centre of challenging the world and the way that people think within it. And I think that we need to recognise that more. I think one of the defining features of GCDE is that it does not exist in a vacuum. It is connected to the social movements, struggles and injustices that shape our world today, from climate crisis to racial justice, from forced migration to economic inequality. And this means that as educators, we are not just responsible for delivering knowledge, but for ensuring that our students have the tools to analyse global challenges critically, respond with empathy, and take meaningful action in their fields. And this is why the Praxis project has been such an important initiative at UCC. Since its inception in 2019, Praxis has worked to bring GCDE to the heart of third level education, ensuring that these discussions are not optional add-ons, but are central to our academic work. And I'd really like to take this opportunity to thank Irish Aid for committing to the project and for their ongoing commitment to the project and for allowing it to grow in the way that it has. And I think it is starting to really bear fruit at the institution and has had significant reach within the institution out through all of the disciplines. And I think that's something that's really strong about this project. It's the interdisciplinary nature of the resources that have been generated. And it's not just relevant to those of us working in education. It's important across disciplines, and we see that through the work that Gertrude has led on, and that's vitally important as well. So it's GCDE has significance for medicine, for business, for law, for engineering, for the sciences. It's not just within the social science arena where we should be bringing these issues to the fore. And I just want to mention now the range of resources that have been produced. It's really amazing to see such breadth in the way that the Praxis project has developed. I think we've got a whole range of things. We've got resources on critical pedagogy, anti-racism, LGBTQ plus inclusion, global activism, and there's an interesting resource in ophthalmology, ensuring that medical students understand the social determinants of health and global inequalities and access to healthcare. So there's a whole breadth of things there that will be really useful for educators in engaging with their students. And I think this work demonstrates something incredibly important. It's that GCDE is not about a single course or a single department. It is about the shifting way we think about education itself. And finally, I just want to end. I'm conscious of time. I just want to end by congratulating Gertrude again and all of the authors and contributors to all of the resources and the whole of the Praxis project, and for bringing everything together. It's not just an academic project. It is a meaningful contribution to rethinking education for the future. And I would join Ursula in joining you to encourage people to engage with these resources and integrate them into your own work. And it's really great to see that there's such a strong and deep commitment to continuing the work and to be thinking about ways of challenging education for social justice. Thank you.
Nicola, thank you very much for those lovely comments. Delighted to hear that support, and your support has been very, very welcome, I can tell you. Yes, and I do feel that the Praxis project and I have found a home in the School of Education. So I suppose one of the things I want to reflect on is what you said about it's cross-disciplinary, and it's about I suppose there's been a lot of people involved. Certainly there's been an awful lot of people who have supported this work, often hidden. behind the scenes a lot of work in terms of trying to just move things forward. It's extraordinary. It's been an extraordinary journey, and many of them are here today, as I said. So I just want to really say that. The first person that I'm going to introduce to talk about one of the resources is Dr. Sana Kabar. Sana is the co-chair of the Race and Equality Network, but she's also been a long time, even before the Race and Equality Network position, she's been a long time supporter of the Praxis project. And I am so grateful for her ongoing support. Is one of the people who has really, this is the kind of work that really needs, as you said, Ursula, resilience, but it also needs people who are willing to stay in the long run and to stay there with you. And Sana has definitely been one of those people. So Sana, I'm going to hand it over to you now. Renee, would you move the thing there, the slides? So just to say before you start, Sana, the project, a lot of what we're talking about here today isn't just a resource as such. I think the Praxis project is trying to do is to work with people in any way, wherever the energy is and wherever the interests are, with different people in different ways, you know, in order to engage them with some of the issues that we're interested in, the global kind of challenges. And that happens in different ways and in different spaces. And one of the ways in that we have found, especially when you're dealing with a large number of staff, because we are working across the university, one of the ways in is definitely the creative arts. And we have had a kind of this project is kind of has many different moving parts to it. So it's not just a final piece of work. It's been a journey that has involved staff and students. And Sana is going, before we go on, Sana, I do have to bring in my corny joke, because this is called The Elephant in the Room. And the thing is, why did the elephant refuse to leave the team's call? Because no one was addressing the elephant in the room. However, Sana is now going to address the elephant in the room, and I'll hand it over to you. And Renee, will you take down the thing? Not yet, but just in a few, if you can, in a few seconds after Sana has talked about what's on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Gertrude, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really very happy to be here today as co-chair of the UCC Race Equality Network, which, as many of you may know, is for staff and postgraduate students. And I'm also here as a Praxis project affiliate. It's been really a real pleasure and privilege to have participated in the Elephant in the Room project, but also to have witnessed how the idea actually emerged one day during a casual conversation with Gertrude and Amin, when one of us used the phrase, the elephant in the room, to describe the reluctance and sometimes discomfort around discussing racism in higher education. We noticed that some staff members and some students wanted to engage with this challenging topic, but they didn't always know where to start or how to start, maybe. And we also noticed that many avoided talking about the topic altogether, or even vehemently denied the presence of racism in our institution or on other institutions. So the Elephant in the Room project emerged as a response to this situation. It was designed to create facilitated spaces where these conversations could happen openly and productively, and also to help us understand students and staff understanding of and experiences with racism or lack thereof. We were not making any assumptions in these exploratory projects. So staff and students who participated in the initial conversations when we were making the elephants, in Nano-Nagel Place, we have engaged in deep conversations about how racism operates within higher education institutions, not just in individual interactions, but sometimes also through structural inequalities. And the findings from this exploratory study from the part where we placed the elephants around campus and collected data, anonymous data from the UCC community, they were equally very insightful, and they reflected a range of views and deeply personal experiences. And for example, a dominant theme that emerged that I feel personally, I relate to, is linguistic racism. As an English language teacher whose first language is other than English, particularly in the form of microaggressions. I mean, this was a recurring theme in the data. And participants also highlighted the normalization of racist slurs in certain social settings. There were also concerns about tokenism and performative inclusion, and the lack of adequate support systems to address these issues effectively. In Ireland, I think that conversations about race and racism, they have perhaps developed more slowly than some other countries with a longer history of diversity. And the universities are no exception, because universities are not neutral spaces. They reflect the broader societal dynamics. And we found that when staff are given the space to reflect on their own roles in shaping inclusive environments, many of them are really willing to engage and challenge these and change these practices. And so staff training can help bridge this gap by providing the tools to recognize and address these issues. But training cannot be a one-off event. It must be embedded into professional development, ensuring long-term change rather than short-lived awareness. However, to ensure that race and equality remain central to higher education requires a shift in how we think about inclusion. It's not enough to celebrate diversity. It's not enough to just have one training here or another training there. But we need to really understand and dismantle the barriers that prevent full participation. This includes re-examining hiring practices, diversifying and decolonizing curricula, addressing racial microaggressions, etc. And incorporating global citizenship and development education into the curriculum can help address these challenges by fostering critical thinking, promoting empathy, and encouraging active engagement with global justice issues, not just for staff, but also for students. I'd like to conclude by saying that the Elephant in the Room project is only one step in this journey, but sustained change requires all of us, staff, students, and leadership, to engage in this work consistently to make Irish universities places where all students and staff feel valued and included. And I'd like to thank Gertrude very much. She knows that I admire her creativity and hard work, mutual admiration, as she calls it. And thank you very much.
Yeah, it's like a mutual admiration club here between Sana and I. Thank you, Sana. And just for the academics who are amongst us as well, there is a treatment as well within that resource of global of anti-racism framing and critical race theory within global citizenship education, as opposed to anti-racism within campus, if you know what I mean. But anyway, but for Avril, I see you're here. Thank you for coming. It is interesting to look at all the comments that were made. People passing our elephants that we made on campus we got 63 replies or stories, some of which were positive, but I'm sorry to say that a lot of them weren't actually. In fact, I think there was 5 positive ones. So I think they would be very useful. It would be a very useful resource for actually using what is happening on campus and the things that are happening to staff and students on campus. There's something very tangible about using those stories, because that's what people are talking about. Now, admittedly, if you were to ask the whole college, I don't think you'd get as sense of the negative aspect of things, because I think when you see an elephant, you're more drawn to it if you're somebody who actually is in that position. So it does have that kind of limitation, but at the same time, it is very interesting just to see the content of some of the stories, all of which are on the resource. Amina, you're going away. Could just very briefly, would you like to say a few words? And I want to acknowledge, just while we're still on the elephant in the room, the work of Amin and Martha as two other people who have been incredibly supportive all the time for many years, and I'm so appreciative. So Amin and Martha, if you want to say a word about the elephant as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Gertie and Sana, and hello everyone. Happy Persian New Year. Today is Persian New Year, and that means it is the first day of spring, and we have sunshine here too. It is the same. So just very quick, because I have limited time to explain about our work, particularly anti-racism training and work. In March 2022, we delivered a training or workshop on racial literacy for educators, particularly for staff in UCC. And the workshop was facilitated by experienced trainer Aba Agarwal. She is from Race Matters, and her website is www.racematters.education. And then following that training, we had a conversation on racism, again facilitated by Sana, Gertrude, and myself, and Nita Mishra joined us online. Following those meetings, we worked hard. One of the results you can see, as Sana mentioned, it is elephant in the room. And then following that, Sana led Race and Equality Network, and then I worked with ISS 21, and we have now the populism and the rise of the far right cluster in ISS 21. Gertrude, Sana, and myself, we are active members of the cluster. Thank you.
Thank you, Amin. As Amin said, you know, we did, this was a long process. You'd have to read the resource, but basically there was a project that happened with staff, with students, anti-racism with staff and students, for ourselves as well. And then there was a workshop where we made the elephants, but there was also a discussion between staff and students about racism and critical race theory. And then there was a piece of research out of that, because the elephants were around the college, and we got 63, I think, replies. And there's an analysis of that work in the resource as well. So it's a project, but it's also a piece of research. And the last part of the resource actually has the results of the research, very recent research. Maria, would you like to say something? Yeah, Maria was at the time was doing a master's in law, but was also doing my course as a student with the university-wide module on global citizenship education. So Maria was also involved in this project. So a lot of people from the elephant here. So Maria.
Yes, thank you, Gertrude. Well, I'm an indigenous rights lawyer from Peru. So as Gertrude said, I was studying my master's in international human rights at the School of Law. Right now, I'm the research associate at the Indigenous Rights Cluster that we've just founded last month at the School of Law as well. And well, before being involved in the Elephant in the Room project, we had an anti-racism training in the class. And I think it was really important for us because when you have people talking about their experiences on racism, it has an impact that allows us to be more empathetic, but also to start thinking about the role we play in society regarding racism, whether we are the victims or not. And for me, because of my background in indigenous peoples, I think having this anti-racist approach when talking about global citizenship was really important. I think racism is still the source of many problems we have in the world. So it allows us to go back in history and start talking about colonization and the ongoing impacts today. From why people of color suffer discrimination, for example, to why indigenous people's knowledges are still excluded from the curricula in higher education. I remember that in one class we were discussing the language we use to describe global inequalities, and we were surprised to realize that we don't usually use the categories of colonize or of decolonize and the colonizer, as if they were part of an old past, as if we weren't living in a world where colonial legacies are so present in so many ways. So for me, the module was really insightful. I'm really grateful for it. It gave me the framework for my LLM dissertation and for future research on the right of intercultural higher education as a human right. Yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
Gertrude.
Thank you, Maria. That was great. It was lovely to hear it from that perspective, from the student perspective. I know you're not a student anymore and you work as a lawyer in Peru, but you know, it's still lovely to hear it from the perspective of being in the classroom. So, and you fortunately are continuing to work with us on another partnership piece of research that we're doing. Martha, do you want to say something very quickly, even though you deserve a lot more time?
No, I'm happy with that. That's okay.
Okay, Martha, thank you
Thanks,
for all your
Gertrude.
support. One of the most supportive people of the Praxis project. I just want to acknowledge that today. Well, there's a lot of people here. Well, thank you. Yeah, you're amazing. But you know that.
No, and likewise, I look at it goes without saying what I've learned since I've joined Global Citizenship and Development Education has been just really amazing, to be honest. It's opened up my mind. I mean, I always had kind of that draw for global perspectives, but I think you've just made it tangible and I just realistic. So just a couple of insights from the Elephant in the Room project. I suppose firstly, just 3 points, like the prevalence of racism on the campus. That was, initially I was surprised, and I guess, when I reflected, I guess I wasn't surprised really, given I suppose the outside, if you like, influences that are going on in the world. I suppose secondly, just to mention that the types of racial discrimination, language like microaggressions, implicit bias, linguistic racism, institutional racism. I guess these are things to be honest, I'm going to be very honest. I found it very difficult to define racism. I didn't really know what it was, even, and how to explain it. And thanks, Gertrude, you've put language on that for me in particular, so that I can explain to my children and my families, when we're having these discussions, what it actually means, and give them practical examples, because it's quite, you don't want to admit to yourself that sometimes you might say things unconsciously and you don't mean it, but it's just the phrase that you use could be construed as being racist to the other person. So it just gave me pause for reflection, and to, I suppose, be aware of my own language, and also the impact on the university community. That students feel alienated and maybe socially marginalized, and also the experiences of racism, that they contribute to an unwelcoming environment for some individuals. So, I just think this research is just a huge, it's just, a great start to opening up this conversation. And I think the recommendations, Gertrude, that were made in the report, I think they're fantastic, and I'd love to see them being implemented now in the university. But I think there's still lots more work to be done in getting to the root cause of racism. Why is it that we are racist towards other people? Whether it's hate or fear or jealousy or feeling threatened, whether it's clashing values, socioeconomic inequalities, drivers of these emotions that I would like to see further research been done. Thank you.
Lovely.
Thanks,
Thanks, Martha. Thank you very much. And sorry for rushing you there. And thanks, Eilish, for your lovely comments. We're going to move on. I'm conscious, very conscious of time at this stage. I knew this was going to be a problem. My fault. Renee, you're next. Two things. First of all, I think more than anybody, Renee has put in Sharon, you're nodding. So much work here. Renee is an ophthalmologist, specialism in ophthalmology. I think very few people know that Renee is the person who did all the work on the layout and on the website of all of the resources. So, I mean, really, thank you very much, Renee. It's an absolutely, I did a lot more than layout. A lot of my really bad writing, and I'm sure was edited by you, and especially small details, and very visual person, which is maybe why you're a specialist in ophthalmology. So if you want to put up the slides, do you want to do that, or do you want to? Yeah. So if you go on, first of all, please. Yeah, we'll go on. We won't bother with the honking. There isn't time. So I would like to hand over to you now, Renee, to talk about. Renee also did one of the resources, because, like, you know, we often think of what we're trying to do here is to get away from the whole silo thing. We're all in our own, you know, individual kind of little places or whatever. But actually, you know, this is one of these areas of study that really can be applied to anywhere. It's not rocket science, you know, but so we try to work across the university. And, you know, it's, as I said, I feel really that it's the doing of it actually with people is as important as what you see at the end. So, Renee, could I pass over to you there to talk about your piece, your resource on global citizenship, development, education, and ophthalmology?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk today. And my name is Rene Gonzalez, and I have the privilege to co-author in the resource Global Citizenship and Development Education Meets Ophthalmology with Gertrude. This work is part of the Praxis project at UCC and represents an important step in integrating global justice and human rights into medical education. The idea of the resource came from a recognized gap in medical education, whereby a critical perspective on social determinants of health, inequality, and global justice could be improved. Eye health is linked to systemic injustices, poverty, gender inequality, lack of access to care, and climate change, all of which play a role in visual impairment. Although medical education is rigorous, medical students receive little training on how to approach these issues beyond clinical interaction. Medical practitioners gain an appreciation of this knowledge through experience, but not necessarily they all have the same exposure. So we wanted to create a practical, adaptable resource that equips educators to prepare future ophthalmologists, not just to be skilled physicians, but also advocates to equitable eye health and to broaden their understanding of global impact of their profession. This resource that we made is structured in 12 modules. They cover everything from ethical considerations and global ophthalmology to policy advocacy, sustainable practices, and international partnership. We grounded the content in real-world case studies, interactive activities, and critical discussions so that medical educators can easily integrate it into their teaching. Working with Gertrude, we combined perspectives from medical education and global justice frameworks, ensuring that the resource is both academically rigorous and practically useful. GCDE in ophthalmology means involving beyond treating eye diseases to addressing structural inequalities that cause them. Educators play a vital role in shaping how future practitioners thinking about global health. And this resource will hopefully help them to do so. By using these materials, we can encourage a new generation of ophthalmologists and other specialties as well to see their role as eye health care providers, advocating for systemic change in healthcare. I hope this resource will inspire educators and practitioners to integrate global justice perspectives into medical training. And to conclude, I'd like to thank Gertrude for her inspiration, collaboration, and trust in the production and of this resource and all the other resources. And I encourage you all to have a look at them, explore the document, not only this document, all the other documents that have been up on the web, and the longer versions that are downloadable. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee, and congratulations on really an amazing piece of work and a unique piece of work, because I don't think there are many resources out there in such depth, at least, on ophthalmology and global citizenship education. So thank you for leading the way, and you know, it's an excellent piece of work. Well done. Thank you. We're moving on now. Could you, Renee, would you mind going on to the next slide? And here we have the bold Sharon. Sharon, I still don't know how to pronounce your name. It's terrible.
Ulch, that's okay. It's okay. Ulch.
I just can't, sorry. Sharon was a person who was an expert in the area of critical pedagogy. So because we talk so much about critical pedagogy as being one of the key kind of frames or kind of theoretical foundations for global citizenship education, we felt that it was important to do a resource that combines critical pedagogy and global citizenship education. So no better person than Sharon. So Sharon, I'll hand over to you now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. And thank you, Gertrude, for inviting me to participate in this really important work and for your leadership. And a shout out to Rennie. I also concur with Gertrude. The work behind scenes was phenomenal. So thanks. So let me just say at its core that this Let's Get Critical Pedagogy Meets Global Citizenship Education Toolkit recognizes that education is not neutral. And hence you can see two people that have been really influential to me, Paulo Freire and Bell Hooks. And Nicole, I'm going to echo some of the things that you said in your comments as well. Education either upholds systems of power and inequality or challenges them. And critical pedagogy is a philosophy of education that encourages staff and students to examine power structures, inequities, and fosters critical consciousness to promote social justice. So indeed, critical pedagogy maintains that education must be more than just knowledge transfer. It must be transformation of students, of the classroom, and society itself. This belief in the necessity of transformation is where critical pedagogy and global citizenship education intersect. And in this Let's Get Critical toolkit, we wanted to put both frameworks in dialogue because they both ask four really fundamental questions. One, whose knowledge counts? Two, whose voices are missing? Three, who benefits from the way things are? And four, how can education be used to disrupt oppression rather than reinforce it? We put these two frameworks in dialogue to provide examples of what it might look like in the classroom when education explicitly applies both critical pedagogy and global citizenship education to a specific discipline. So I like to think of critical pedagogy in this context as the how, and global citizenship education as the what, and both of those overlaid onto the content of a particular discipline. And we illustrate this in Module 4 in the toolkit, and there are 6 modules in this toolkit. Global citizenship teaches us that we are all interconnected, that poverty, migration, environmental destruction, and political injustice don't just happen in isolation, nor are they accidental. They are part of economic, political, and social systems that must be critiqued, deconstructed, and changed. And critical pedagogy gives us the tools to do this work in our classrooms. So this toolkit is about making higher education a space where students do not simply learn about social justice or only engage in critique, but become active agents for social justice. To this end, the toolkit provides educators with real strategies, problem-posing methods, case studies, collaborative learning activities, and assessments. We wanted to ensure that students are not just receiving knowledge, but questioning it, analyzing power structures, and imagining alternatives. So why did this matter? Many of us have already talked about what's going on globally around rising inequalities, climate crisis, human rights violations. And critical pedagogy is a pedagogy of hope and possibility that offers students and staff a space to imagine a world otherwise. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples to illustrate how critical pedagogy and global citizenship education are interconnected in this toolkit. So for example, we cannot teach about global economics without interrogating who holds power, who makes decisions, who's excluded from decision makings. Nor can we teach about climate change without talking about the communities most affected by environmental destruction. So from a critical pedagogue framework, education must name these injustices, but more importantly, it must make students uncomfortable, not to paralyze them, but to empower them. And this toolkit challenges higher education institutions to move beyond tokenistic approaches to global citizen education. We must equip students with the critical consciousness to dismantle systems of oppression and to take action for a more just and sustainable world. As Paulo Freire said, washing one's hands of conflict between powerful and powerless means to side with the powerful, not to be neutral. So in closing, let me just say that this toolkit is an invitation to not be neutral, to make our classrooms spaces where education is not just about understanding the world, but also about changing it. This is an invitation to teach in ways that center justice, resistance, and collective action. So thank you, and thank you again for the opportunity to contribute to this resource and to all of you who also contributed. Thank you, Gertrude.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, the challenge of neutrality or not. Thank you very much. And it was a pleasure to work with you. Difficult moments, I know, because these are not easy issues, but we got there in the end. So well done and congratulations on getting that resource. That living resource, never to be finished, I think. Okay, Eilish, thanks very much for joining us. And just to recognize Eilish Dillon, who was part of, you know, I suppose is a lecturer in this area, leading person in this area in the country, but had also contributed to one of the resources that I'll talk about in a minute. I'm sorry about the rush, but we'll move on. The next resource that we want to talk about is, these are all more than resources, really. They're actually events or things that happened, projects, long-term and short-term, that happened over a number of years in some cases. And this one is called the Mystery Box. And I'm going to hand you over briefly to Emer to talk about the Mystery Box project.
How is everybody
Emer,
doing?
Emer, you might just introduce where you work in UCC, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm in the Department of Microbiology. I'm the departmental operative. And I first, I guess, became aware of Gertrude at the end of 2023 due to shared kind of Palestinian solidarity and activism. And then when she was advertising the mystery box thing, I kind of jumped on it. Not really knowing what I was signing up for, to be honest. And then this box appeared
Stop that
in my office. This big beautiful box with the most beautiful handwriting filled with all sorts of things. Deliberately, obviously, curated for me because of the things that Gertrude, I could not think of your name for a second, knows that I care deeply about. So it was filled with loads of different historical information about the history of Palestine and Israel. And I was tasked with making a timeline and a big, huge ream of paper. So I sat down and made this big timeline of the kind of particular time points that really changed the course of the future of that area. And although it's a place that I've lived and I know a lot about the history, to sit down and kind of do it in this way was very different for me. And to kind of, I've spoken at rallies and things, but instead of speaking, that I was using art and to depict it and kind of brought out the creative side of me, which is something that kind of is very separate often to my activism. And then we all met up over in the Orb. I still didn't really know fully what I was going to be encountering or what to expect. It was an incredibly beautiful event. It was, you know, often when we speak about some of these topics, there's the speaker and there's the audience. Instead, we were all sitting together in a group. And although different people were speaking about the different boxes that they had, it was kind of like a community sharing thing. Like I said, we were sitting in a circle and chatting. And I think what kind of led to it as well is sometimes, like often they said, an expert is speaking on a topic. Gertrude was very deliberate in what she gave the different people, but for each one of us, there was something that we learned about something that we might potentially be interested in work in, or, you know, say it was someone that worked in marketing, got something about the global supply chain and how it opened their eyes to the damage of like fast fashion. And then the passion that comes with someone having just found something out, that it's this kind of shared experience that we're all sharing together, this new information. And it was quite emotional. I think at some point we all probably cried. But it was still very inspiring, like the creativity and the way that some people, what they produced, and as a different way of disseminating information instead of it being, you know, the classical, like we have, I call it a screenshot, goddamn ADHD and word search. What's it called when you, what we're doing, right? Slideshow. It's living a slideshow that was really interactive, and it opened up a lot of discussion between us. And then all our works were put on display. We had an exhibition outside in the Orb. We think of that kind of, it gives people a different way to interact with things, that they can go in their own time and view things and absorb it in a way that is potentially less confrontational, because a lot of these things, the topics are, and it can be really easy to shy away from something. You know, say if you're always shopping in Shein or down in A-Wear, whatever, to then realize that actually by purchasing these items, you are contributing to the suffering of someone else. That's a hard truth to learn. And for it to not be delivered in a way that is judgmental. Sometimes we have to go softly and gently in how we educate people. And I thought it was a really, really clever and engaging way of doing it, because yeah, playing around with crafts and sticks, there's something disarming about it. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Emer. Absolutely. It was a very emotional event, wasn't it?
It was. Like a circle of women. For the most part, it was, I think the room was majority women based. So it was like the circle of women talking about very, very different challenges that the world faces, and being in groups, which I also did not know till we got there. So you kind of been split into teams. So, you know, you were creating a presentation with people that you'd actually never interacted with before, and the kind of dialogue that encourages, it was just incredible.
It was one of an absolutely incredible event. Thank you very much. I think it was probably one of our best events, really, because of just the level. Well, I suppose you can write a resource, but what you can't ever envisage is the quality of input from staff. All the staff, I invited UCC staff, we had 100 applicants, just to say that there is a lot of interest in this area. We actually took 30 because, as you can see, it's too crowded as it is, but there was an awful lot of work went into this helped very much by Richard, who's supposed to be talking about the next resource, but does not appear to be here. But Richard was just finishing his master's at the time and gave me a lot of help in putting together these boxes. And staff were delivered boxes to their rooms with a whole load of artifacts in them into their offices, and they were given instructions as to what to do with these artifacts, bits and pieces of craft and stuff, and then they came together like a bit of a flash mob, really, and they were put into teams which they didn't know they were in, and there was the economics, there was political, social, environmental, and all of that. So they all kind of then had to work together in a team and put a presentation together, give a presentation, and then we made it into an exhibition. Stephen, do you want to say a word about your contribution to that? You were there as well.
Gertrude, just to say Richard is actually here.
Oh, sorry, Dermot, I can't see him in front of me here. Sorry, Richard, I do apologise. I do want to acknowledge your work, Richard, and it is just, I can't see you in front of me here, Richard, but it's hilarious the amount, nobody would imagine the amount of work that went into these boxes. Somebody else would have come in and put
I thought they were going to be a small box, and it was a big, the moving boxes that people have, the time and energy and research that went into it was massive. It kind of blew me away when it arrived, and I think that fed into how people committed to it, because you had done so much work that we were duty bound to do good by you.
It was, yeah, and Richard helped a lot in that, because at one point nobody would believe it, really, the kind of conversations that we had in making those boxes. But Richard, I remember you literally, there was one set of boxes where it was different than all the others. It wasn't a theme, but it was like where each person in the team was going to get exactly the same objects, which were kind of didn't make any sense, really. And I remember Richard literally measuring crayons so that they were all exactly the same size. That's how much detail went into it. So I do appreciate your work there, Richard, and I remember you talking as well, Stephen. I won't come to you, I think, because we don't have time, but Stephen, I remember your work was a lovely, the thing that I remember from what you said was about, you were presented with a lot of issues related to forced migration, and one of the things you and only you in the room could have said it, one of the things you saw in common with a lot of the things you were looking at was that men were at the root of the problem. So sorry to all men here, but that is what you said. So I was delighted with that. So we'll move on. And at the bottom left-hand side are the staff there. The bottom right-hand side is the exhibition. Up at the top left-hand side are some of the artifacts, and the right-hand side is actually Emer's timeline of the history of Palestine and Israel. Thank you, Emer, for that. I appreciate you coming. We'll move on there, Renee, to the next one, which I think, we'll keep going. They can look at that later. This is because it's International Happiness Day. Richard, you're on. Where are you? For some reason, I can see so many people, but I can't see Richard. Oh, there you are. Hello. Hi, Richard. You're very welcome.
It's working now.
Your beautiful piece of artwork is in front of us here, and Richard, I had the privilege of working with Richard did all of the work on this resource, where I introduced you to global citizenship and development education, and you were working in the area of LGBT. Where have you gone again? He's gone again. Sorry, you keep moving on my screen. I do have a joke to go with your one as well. Why did the rainbow refuse to argue? Because it believed in full spectrum representation. So there you are. Clever. I'll hand it over to you, Richard.
Perfect. Well, hopefully you can hear me now. I'll try and keep it brief so I'll be somewhat coherent. But I just want to say thank you, first of all, for having, and thank you to Gertrude as well for not only all the wonderful conversations and for introducing me to GCD, but also being very patient as well with all the, I suppose, rabbit holes that we would have went through and kind of discussing it. And also to thank Dermot Scully as well, who's also so helpful in this project, and for helping with giving advice and for, keeping it grounded, because there is definitely a balance to be struck here, I think. And one of the challenges in actually approaching this was seeing how we could, in a very practical way, make use of the different theoretical kind of approaches, but also keeping it very much grounded. And that's also kind of even mirrored in a way at looking at the content of the resource as well. And I suppose to touch on something earlier that we were mentioning about transgressing, I think was a very important aspect of this. And what I think is really wonderful about Gertrude's approach to GCTE has been that very critical approach. So in terms of approaching the resource, I suppose, especially coming from a history background, was actually looking at kind of the historiography of LGBT and queer activism as a way into looking at issues that are kind of related and discussed in GCT. And a common kind of, I suppose, historiographical framework for LGBT history is often through the legislative kind of history. And in the kind of Irish context, we can go quite early with that, even to the 17th century, and going kind of and discussing in relation to colonialism. It wasn't until the 17th century that there was actually written legislating against homosexuality in Ireland. So that was kind of the approach to kind of see how actually looking at how we do history of LGBT history can actually be a window into that. And kind of like in more recent times, like actually a wonderful publication here in Cork, which Diarmuid had introduced me in the Searocht series, Longings for Another Ireland, Michael Cronin's Sexual Liberation, explored a lot of these issues. And it relates to actually, I suppose, one of the things that was on my mind a lot during this resource, there was actually kind of, I'm mentioning, I suppose, with Emer touched on, the emotional investment in this was quite heavy in approaching these, and there was a big responsibility in being able to represent the different issues. And lost my train of thought there now, what I was going to say, but yeah, trying to make sure, I think going back to what Cronin's kind of main approach in his work, that this wasn't just about LGBT rights in a world that's inherently, or systems that are, unfair and unjust. It's actually looking at these root systemic issues. And actually, just to my left here, I don't know if you can see it, it's probably going to be very blurry, but this is a photograph from the first National Gay Conference in Cork. So this was held in 81, not long after there was, at the time there was quite a contentious split between the Irish gay rights movement and the National Gay Federation. And the conference in Cork had actually come together from kind of different independent groups. But a big kind of driving factor in kind of organizing the conference was this need for a kind of a political consciousness and kind of to bring the kind of activist section of the LGBT movement to the fore. Has come back to me now. I was reading some work of the critical theorist Walter Benjamin recently, who also touched on different aspects of art history. And there was a particular phrase that he uses, this kind of idea of the aestheticization of politics, which I think is a particularly relevant issue in terms of LGBT activism, where if, looking back, the reason I suppose that history is so important is that you see the intersections with so many other aspects of inequality, are there root causes for inequality. As Marta was mentioning there earlier about wondering where, for example, issues of racism arise fundamentally. I think that's so important as well, looking at LGBT rights and the root causes of, say, homophobia, for instance, looking at inherent aspects and systemic issues, So in actually doing the resource, it was quite challenging at times, trying to link it as well with the GCD aspect. So throughout the resource, there's a lot of different sections kind of relating to, areas you mightn't think or to expect kind of LGBT and queer kind of aspects to be relevant. For example, mathematics, you know, there's actually, I had come across literature to do with this, that there were kind of queer, I suppose, approaches to mathematics. They're looking at how, I suppose, again, taking it away from a kind of a normative idea of LGBT activism, but a kind of fundamental level of looking at non-heteronormative experiences to, approaches to, knowledge production, how that can be so relevant in so many different aspects. And again, not just beyond, or not just in this, the area of social sciences or the arts, but into sciences as well. Yeah, and that's just actually another, a very, might seem like an obvious level, but just with the resources as well, that there was an emphasis as well on having information about supports, or even just very immediate things for educators in a classroom setting. Just simple, what might seem like simple things, in terms of, say, the statistics are quite damning in relation to even having students be comfortable using the names that they want to use or pronouns that they want to use. Things like that can actually have substantial, effects on well-being. So just things like that, just in an immediate classroom setting. But yeah, it was definitely a challenge, but a very valuable one as well. So thank you, Gertrude.
Thanks, Richard. It definitely was a challenge. I think the doing of all of these has been very interesting in terms of really trying to integrate different areas. And the conversations with you really were very helpful for me, because you have a very good way of questioning things, both with the boxes, the famous boxes, and also with your own resource. So congratulations on getting there in the end. It was a great achievement. So thank you. I'm going to move on now, and thank you, Diarmuid, if you're still here as well. Diarmuid Scully, who was our was a lecturer in history, but was kind of our consultant for that area. So the next resource, and I know we've really, hi Diarmuid, how are you? Thanks for that. We're going to Always Evolving next. I won't say very much about this. You can read it. The next one. So basically, this resource is a set of timelines. There's about 121 page. Well, they're laminated. I have them laminated, but they're on the resource page as well. And so there's kind of 5 different sort of timelines. One is the history of development education in Ireland and global citizenship education. One is the history of activism in global issues in Ireland. One is kind of global issues internationally. And then one is educational theory, and one is development theory, and so they form a matrix, and you wouldn't necessarily use them all together, but there are kind of ways in which you can use them. So it draws on there are references on them to where the information was drawn on. A lot of work went into making them, and again, thank you, Renee, for the work that you did in the layout of them. That was an incredible amount of work. 100 of these, 120, I think, to be put together was amazing. I have used that resource. I think it needs a bit more work. I think it just needs to be shortened a bit, but I think the basic idea of it is very useful in the classroom. And I would really, it also is a kind of really nice kind of potted history of development of global citizenship education in Ireland. It's very interesting. There is a historian in me. My first degree was in history, so I tend to like to go back to understand the history before I come forward. So I'll go on from there now, because we're really past the time. Renee, I'm not going to do that. Keep going. The next resource is actually also kind of related to history. I think the pictures that you see, it's an oral history of development of global citizenship education in Ireland. And it was a series. Well, I had a radio program called the Global Hub, which I ran for 7 years on basically in general. It's community radio, y'all, and there's 7 years of interviews there. And the first of which was Sheila Dillon, who's with us here. And that was many years ago, Sheila, but I still give it to my students to listen to because it's the best explanation of development education ever. And also, so at the end of all of that, I decided that I would interview certain people. So there was 7 hours, about 30 people that I interviewed from the 1950s to right up to the present day. Some of the pictures are there. Mary, I think, was going to try and make Mary Bottom, Mary Mangan, Eilish Dillon, and Su Ming Ku, all of whom were, well, Eilish was here, Mary couldn't make it, Sue was coming, but she cancelled a while ago. But Vicky, you're here. so just very briefly, Vicky, I mean, I suppose this is a kind of more of a resource in terms of it's radio, it's listening to the history. It's quite, you know, there's a lot there. But again, from a classroom point of view, I've picked out pieces of this resource and used it when I'm trying to get across certain kind of perspectives, and they're all very different. You can imagine somebody who lived in Nigeria in the 1950s and somebody who's working in global citizenship education today. It goes right through the history. It's a wonderful, I love it actually. If anybody has any money and would like to fund me, I'd love to write a book about the 7 years of those interviews, because I think they're a fantastic resource. So it's day for indulgence, but I do actually really think they're very valuable. I suppose when I look at the people in front of me here on that slide, I'm conscious of the amazing people in this sector over many years who have worked on so many different issues that are on very complex global issues, and the amount of work and the staying with it and the staying power. And one of those most wonderful people is Vicky Donnelly, who's currently working with Financial Justice Ireland. Vicky, are you gone?
No, I'm still here.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
still
you're
here.
here.
It's
Sorry,
been
with the slide up,
such a treat to be here, Gertrude, and just to pause, and as other people have, just to express the phenomenal gratitude at the resource that you've pulled together with so many other incredible contributors. I'm blown away. I think there's aspects I've heard of today that I didn't even realize were part of the project. It's really the quality, the depth of the work, the practicality and application of it, how deeply embedded it is in so many different disciplines, and the generosity with which this is all shared. I just heartfelt congratulations to you and to everybody involved. I had a tiny role in this. An interview, I remember, I think we could only meet when, I was in a car and you were somewhere else, and it was but this very enthusiastic conversation that you recorded, but part of a much longer timeline. I've had the privilege to be involved in development education or global education, global justice education for half my life, which is extraordinary privilege. But this telling of the longer story of it, I think, is such a valuable resource for us to tap into ourselves, to know where we've come from and the different threads, the different challenges, the different tensions within our community and our movement. And I'm just, every day now, I think that I listen to the news, I feel more and more grateful to be part of this community, and more convinced of how important it is to recognise that we are a community when so many of the things that people have worked really hard and courageously to achieve are being dismantled. So great to be part of this community, great to have been a tiny part of this project. And I don't want to take up more time than that. People have said really powerful things about the need to dismantle the structures and the ideology that upholds the brutality of poverty and oppression. So I think it's been said in so many brilliant ways already, but really grateful for the resources that we're celebrating today to help in that fight, to help in that struggle. And I know that I'm going to be poring over them for years to come. So thank you very much. Yeah, and Vicky, I mean, while it was a small part in this particular project, you have contributed hugely to UCC in terms of so many workshops, so many classes, you know,
one of the best there is in the country at doing this kind of work. Very, very engaging. And some people here actually who are still here have actually attended some of your workshops here in UCC. So you have made a big contribution to this work, and very, as you said, very generously. So thank you very much. And Renee, can we go to the we're nearly there. Where are we now? The final one, I'm almost kind of glad to say that I think the students who were supposed to give a talk about this final one are actually not here, but you can read it. We haven't got time to go into it, but basically it's about direct action and how to talk about in education and third level, all of these relate to third level education. How do we talk about direct action? And while there is a wide number of examples, it's quite an extensive resource again, but one of the case studies that we took was actually Camp Saoirse, which was the student encampment that was in UCC during the summer in relation to Palestinian genocide. And I suppose the students were very involved in this resource in that they contributed their own perspectives. So it's very nice to read them and to have them kind of as a historical record, but just their personal experiences of how they got on and what was important. So it's kind of a very useful thing to have if you wanted to use a up-to-date, very modern kind of, I'm something like a saleswoman here, a very modern kind of, kind of up-to-date kind of issue with students and how the third level students in this case, what they experience. And in my opinion, the bravest students I've seen for a very long time. And it was just such a, as you can imagine, very controversial in UCC. Not everybody would agree with them or with me, but from my point of view as a global citizenship education person, I think their courage and bravery was just unbelievable. And their analysis, their theoretical analysis and all of that was just absolutely astounding, not just in Cork, but obviously around the world and around the country. So unfortunately, Mark, who was going to talk today, is actually very sick. And the other student is also very sick, and I wouldn't say that their level of stress at the moment is unrelated to what they've gone through. So I would like to kind of just congratulate them and acknowledge that there are a lot of staff as well who support them, and a lot of staff, including Emer, I think, is here, in particular from the Together for Palestine group, who's done Trojan work as well. So there's a lot of connections going on here, but it was a privilege to get those stories from those students. So if they're listening later, hopefully they will. I just want to thank you and say that there's a lot of staff who are on your side as well. And we move on to, we just don't have time, I think, to talk about the, go on, Renee, keep going. The piece of research. Now, I think I will come back to this another time and launch it separately, because this is a very important piece of research. Probably in some ways, the most important thing we're launching. So I am going to come back to it. But basically, this has been 4 years of research. It's part of a series of looking at global citizenship and development education within UCC. But actually, it's more about GCDE in higher level education. So I suppose in the first year, there's a very long report on the website which you can find, but the first year of the research involves staff, a very much a bottom-up kind of approach. About it was, I think it was 20 staff in 18 different departments, where we looked at what is global citizenship education for us? It wasn't that we came in with this definition, it was more, what is it? And tried to figure out what it meant for us as a community of Praxis, Martha. And Brian, both Brian and Martha were there from the beginning, and I really appreciate both of you still being here. Thank you very much. Both of you have been incredibly supportive. And I think that teamwork and that staying with us has been just so, I can't emphasize how important that has been, personally and work-wise. So that was first year. The second year, we did really extensive work with students. There were something like I can't think of the number now. I think it was 750 students or thereabout who responded to a survey, but we also did interviews with students, and we looked at every single module in the college to see where there was a relationship with global citizenship education in some way. We also looked at what students are doing in their free time, in their formal time, and outside of college as well. It's a very extensive piece of work, and I think the findings in that actually are very illuminating and very interesting in that second report. The third report then is this year's, which was supposed to be finished at the end of last year, but we were waiting actually in a way for the global engagement plan from UCC, because we wanted to align a bit with that, because I suppose what it would seem like is that this was a piece of work that's to do with global citizenship education in UCC, but it's actually not. It's more about global citizenship and development education in higher level education. So it's more, we have talked to all these staff, we have talked to all these students, and what are we learning from that? And, you know, what would suggested from our insights, what would we say it would be important in a general way? I think it's too important to rush it, because I think it's a very significant piece of work, and it just needs more attention. So I think I will come back to it and present the findings properly another time. But just to say that that's not quite up in the web, I'll get it up by tomorrow. It should be up today, but I'll get up tomorrow. So so that was the last thing we wanted to launch today. So what I would like to ask you to do, so again, thank you very much, everybody, for being here, and all your support over the years. And thanks, Renee, for helping with the slides as well. So can I ask you, coming back, I should say we'll do one thing. Apparently, when you look it up, elephants rumble. I didn't know that they rumbled, but they do. So elephants symbolize wisdom, memory, and action, just like our research did today. And they also communicate through deep rumbles, apparently. You look it up, they rumble. Elephants never forget. So I want to ask you, what one key lesson or takeaway from today that we should never forget? And I would ask you to type it in the chat, but also in DevEd kind of language. You might just do a bit of a rumble while you're writing it. So go to put on your mics, and all together, when I say 3, you're all going to rumble together. You can honk, or you can do anything you want, actually, but make a noise so that we'll have it for posterity. So put on your mics. I can't see any mics on at all.
Mine is on, and I'm going to howling.
The DevEd people have the mics on first. You see? Okay. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and then you can twitter. I can hear a bird twittering. You can rumble. You can do anything you want. You can make a face. It is International Happiness Day. It's also International Forest Day. It seems to be international everything. It's the first day of spring. So you can make a face if you want. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. Well done. Okay, and you have something to write there now. I'm going to record, that is recorded, which I forgot to say at the beginning. So I would like you to write something on the chat, just so that we would have it, you know, just as a memory again today of what maybe something you took from this event. Explore improving online education in Gaza. Yes, Anwar, I mean, as a result of all of this, one of the well, there's two, sorry, Carol, I didn't get to you, Carol, but one of the findings of the research was that UCC staff in particular are very interested in international collaborations in the, you know, so we now have 5 different collaborations going on, of which I think everybody here is actually involved in one or the other. Anybody who's not is welcome, including those who are not working in UCC, who are in the middle of the screen. I've moved to my left. So I suppose we're working, and I just saw a message from Anwar, that's why I mentioned him. Anwar is in Palestine. We have Maria.
I think that might be my message, Gertrude, not Anwar.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry,
it's
sorry.
the same point anyway. Yeah.
Simon, you know, whatever, Peru, Malawi, Gambia, and India. So we have 4 different teams working now on partnerships, and that's a direct result of the research, where it was evident that this was something that interested the staff here. So my advice in general would be that people would, you know, it might be completely different in Galway University or in Dublin or whatever, but this is what people were interested in our research. So we went with that. Love the little jokes, really. Yeah, thanks, Carol. If it was because we missed the start, it was because it was International Happiness Day. So we put silly jokes in. So that's about it, I think. I will advertise, I think, the launch of the other thing, and also the research on the anti-racism research for another day. And we'll do a research event. Any other comments, thoughts, ideas that you want to share? There was a lot in it, but I mean, if we were going to do them separately, we would be here for the rest of the year trying to launch them. So they're all launched. Oh, hold on. I do have, just as well I'm amongst friends here, I am going to cut the ribbon. They're now officially launched. I don't know what you do when you launch something. We don't have any champagne, so thank you. And Carol, I want to thank you as well for your support, which is also very valuable. So thank you very much, everybody. Simon, did you want to say something, or sorry?
No, other than to apologise for joining very late because a previous meeting overran and I had difficulties with the link for some weird reason. That's all.
Okay, yeah. You know, it takes these BIS people to have problems with technology.
Oh, listen, me and the IT don't agree at the moment. But I mean, on the project itself, really looking forward to getting stuck into that with our Palestinian partners in the next few weeks.
Yeah, so it's brilliant. It's going to be great. So thanks, Simon, and thanks everybody. We'll leave it at that. Carol, did